All right. Well, that's our prayer that we give ourselves to God, and He would speak to us and speak what is true, and we're able to truly connect with Him in such a way where we're able to grow and we're able to just experience something fresh in our lives, and that's what we've been doing, and when we've been sort of pursuing as it relates to emotionally healthy spirituality. This is again, I've already mentioned this, and I don't know how else to say it. I've appreciated the time we've spent in this series to connect with God, to see how we can what is inside of us that is a part of our past that is holding us back, that is weighing us down, and how God can heal us and bring us into really the true self that who we are, that God has created us to be, rather than the self that was created as a result, again, of our family upbringing or whatever it is. And again, like I said last week, there's good and there's bad as it relates to our heritage and to our family upbringing, but the things that weigh us down can really get us stuck, right? And the things that what we're going to be talking about today is that there are also challenges in life that really get us stuck, because this is a journey. This is a journey of emotional and spiritual transformation, and we know, and a lot of us have experienced this, that when we give our hearts to God, as we just sang in that song, as we give our hearts to God, that we often will experience an incredible change, an incredible transformation. I know that even though I grew up in the church in a Christian family, it wasn't until I was 19 when I gave my heart over to God for real and genuinely, and I experienced change. I stopped doing many things that I was doing that was not healthy and not helpful or even sinful, and I experienced growth. But as I've gone on in my life and in my journey, there are times when I hit, as Peter Scazzero says in the book, I've hit a wall, right? And suddenly things are not as easy as it maybe once was with my spiritual journey. I don't seem to be seeing any growth. I don't seem to be seeing any change. I keep hitting the wall, right? This is so important as we continue this journey, again, of trying to become emotionally healthy so that we can have an emotionally healthy spirituality. It's important that we let go of power and control. And what he means by that, what I mean by that, is that we no longer say that we're going to be the ones to get ourselves through this. No, God, we have to partner with God, let go of the things that we think are the ways through the wall, so to speak, and we partner with God, and He brings us through, and we continue on the journey, right? Like, once you get through that wall, you then continue on the journey, and more often than not, it's a journey inwardly, and that's how we get through the wall and how we continue past the wall. All right, so let me go ahead and continue to talk about what it means to be a disciple of Jesus, and it's everything I've just alluded to, and this is so important because Paul said in Philippians, he said that we are to continue to work out our salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill His good purpose. So he's saying continue to work out your salvation. God is the one who is working in you, but it's our responsibility. So there's really that partnership that I was just referring to, right? It's a partnership between us and God to continue to grow and make progress on this journey. But then Paul also said that we are to, that he said that I am certain that God who began the good work within you will continue His work until it is finally finished on the day when Messiah Jesus returns. So yeah, we partner with God, but Paul had every confidence that as long as we, remained devoted to God, that God would finish the work that He began in us. And that the idea is that when Jesus comes, there will be a culmination, a completion of our transformation. But we are working on it with God. We're on a journey. We're making progress every step of the way until that happens. So sorry to say, especially maybe some of you who've been Christians for a long time, The journey is not over. And maybe this is encouraging. The journey is not over. There's more to do, more to learn, more to grow. And I often think about how Viola would often come up to me after service and say, you preach something that I never thought of before, and it made me think. And I'm just like, she's in her 90s, and she's saying that. So you know what? There's never a time when we can't grow or continue to learn, and it all comes to fruition and completion when Jesus comes and we're in the kingdom of God. So, like I was saying, many of us become Christians and we experience some positive change, but then the reality is that we will often, something will happen and we will hit some kind of wall. That's, again, this is the term that Pete Scazzero uses in the book Emotionally Healthy Spirituality, that we hit a wall and we're unable to continue to grow. We sort of stay the same. And some people stay at that wall stage for many, many years, right? Maybe without even realizing it. But there are different stages of faith, and this is how Scazzero puts it in the book. There's the life-changing awareness of God. That's what I was saying, we first recognize God. There's discipleship, there's learning, there's the active life, that's serving. Then this is usually when people hit the wall. And then we have our journey inward. That's what happens after you get past the wall. We'll talk about that in a second. And then we go on a journey outward from that inner life. And the last part, which, I don't know if any of us have reached there yet, but we're transformed into love. So, in fact, let's go through these different stages of faith and see, and maybe you can see where you are in the different stages of faith. And he gets the different stages of faith from a book called The Critical Journey, Stages in the Life of Faith. So you might be interested in looking into that. But the first one, again, is that life-changing awareness of God. It's that experience that many of us, I just alluded to mine, that we realize our need for mercy and we begin our relationship with him. And that, causes an explosion of great feelings, of transformation in our hearts. Again, maybe some of you can think about what changed when you became a Christian, or what changed when you finally gave yourself over to God in a personal way. And it went from just being something that you did on Sundays, and it went from just being something that maybe a family member, introduced to you, and it became something real. And then you experienced that transformation. It sort of launched you on this journey of transformation. And then that leads to stage 2, which is discipleship. And this is a wonderful thing. You begin to learn about the faith. You begin to learn what it means to be a Christian. As Scazzero said, he said, we become part of a Christian community and you begin to get rooted in the disciplines of the faith. A wonderful step and necessary step in that journey, right? And then that leads to stage 3, which is you begin to actually serve. You begin to actually engage in ministry yourself. Scazzero says we take responsibility by bringing our unique talents and gifts to serve Christ and others. Maybe you join the worship team, maybe you become a trustee or a deacon, maybe you get involved in community outreach, whatever your unique talent is, you start serving God and people with your talents, and now you're in an active role of faith. You went from just realizing your need for God to beginning to learn about him and his ways, to then living it out in your lives. All wonderful things. And this is sort of the stages that happen to people as they embrace God. But then, stage 4, we hit the wall, and the wall is an event or a circumstance that occurs in our lives that makes us question or doubt God or our faith. And suddenly what worked for us before in our faith journey doesn't work anymore. And there's a long quote I think is fruitful if I read it. Scazzero says, for most of us, think about this, the wall appears through a crisis that turns our world upside down. Have any of you ever endured a crisis in your life and it felt like your world was turned upside down? Perhaps it's a divorce, perhaps it's job loss, the death of a close friend or family member, cancer diagnosis, disillusioning church experience, a betrayal, a shattered dream, a wayward child, a car accident, an inability to get pregnant, a deep desire to marry that remains unfulfilled, a dryness or loss of joy in our relationship with God. Sadly, the list goes on, right? There are different things that we go through that unfortunately really puts a halt on our journey of faith and progress on that journey. And as he continues to say, we question ourselves, question God, we question the church. We discover for the first time that our faith does not appear to work. We have more questions than answers, as the very foundation of our faith feels like it's on the line. We don't know where God is. We don't know what he's doing. We don't know where he is going and how he's getting us there, right? Or when this will be over. Again, I don't know if too many of us don't have some kind of experience like that to one degree or another, right? The hopeful thing is that faith, true faith, is not about being certain. It is not about knowing exactly, having all the answers to, on the one hand, all of our theological questions and all of our skeptical type questions, but also in terms of life. What is it that is happening? Where is God? Why is this happening to me? Faith does not mean we know all the answers. In fact, it's within not knowing those answers, we trust in God and we remain faithful. And that is what allows us actually to get past the wall. And we go inward to experience what it is that we need to get past that wall. And then that leads to stage 5. Once we are past the wall, it's a journey outward. And he said, having passed through the crisis of faith and the intense inner journey necessary to go through the wall, we begin once again to move outward to do for God. The difference is that we now give out of a new grounded center of ourselves in God. And lastly, we realize that love truly is the beginning and the end. And by this stage, the perfect love of God has driven out all fear, and the whole of our spiritual lives is finally about surrender and obedience to God's will. So I truly hope that, I don't know, like, dude, does this all make sense in these different stages, right? The different stages, we experience God, we begin to learn, we begin to then serve. Something happens, and it's not just one time. It can happen several times throughout our lives, and we don't know where God is, and we question our faith, and we're not sure what's going on, and we seem to hit a wall, and we're not continuing to grow in our faith. But we partner with God, and we understand that God is with us, and he gets us through these times, right? And we're able to go past the wall, which is a journey inward, and we're able to then have a journey outward to continue to serve as we, maybe even exactly the same as we were before in terms of the things that we're doing, but we're doing it from a new place inside. It's a new place where we're focused on God, and we're no longer doing it out of perhaps a lack of connection to God, but we're doing it fully connected to God, and that leads into fully surrendering, as he says, fully surrendering to God's perfect will, and living out that kind of love. So, before we get to the signs that you've passed the wall, let me just share with you some of my wall experiences, because you know what? Like I said, I gave myself to God when I was 19 years old, and it was a wonderful experience, and I'll never forget it. It was transforming. It has motivated me strongly for a very long time, and it still, to some degree, motivates me. Just that experience of realizing my need for God and what that did for me. But within a year, the girlfriend I was with at the time broke up with me, and that was devastating. And that led to a whole, summer, at least, or rest of that year of questioning what I was supposed to do with my life and where I was going. And that was a real wall experience for me. Thankfully, not long after, Sarah came into my life, and we continued and began that journey. But guess what? And I hope Sarah doesn't mind me sharing this. It's nothing detailed, of course. But not long after Sarah and I began dating, Sarah got mono. And that put her out of commission for a couple of years. And that was a real challenge. We had found each other and we loved each other, but we didn't know how to function as a couple, as a young couple, right? Because we couldn't go out, we couldn't do the things that we wanted to do, and it was very tough. And then once she got better, she went to Korea for a year, and I totally understand her desire to want to do that, but that was very tough on me, being left behind and knowing that we loved each other and wanted to get married, and yet we were separated for over a year. These are all experiences that really, I wasn't able to easily get through any of these experiences. I had to rely on God and look inwardly and say, I don't know what to do, but I'm going to give myself over to you. And just very, very quickly, some of the other challenges that we faced over the past 10 years of being married is when we were first married, boy, we had some struggles to try to understand each other and try to grow in who we were as people. And then 6 years ago, I became your pastor, and that was a wonderful challenge, but nevertheless a challenge. And I had to look inside myself and partner with God to understand, how I can actually be in this role. It was very new to me, and it was very new, to how to deal with that and how to become connected to God within that position. And lastly, without getting into details, just our journey, Sarah and my journey to becoming parents and now being parents. It's tough. It's not easy. It doesn't come like that. God doesn't magically make things happen. We have to trust in Him. So all of that to say is that I've been presented with different changes in my life, different circumstances that have been very tough and very challenging. And those are just mine. You can think of yours, right? But even though I was unsure of how things would go and how things would work out, I was able to trust in God. I had to look inwardly and partner with God to be able to continue on. And that's what it means to get past the wall that we're talking about here. This journey of growing in emotional health, what we're doing right now in this series, guess what? That is how we journey inward, and it gets us through the wall. So we're actually learning the practice of how we can get past these circumstances and these crises in our lives that hold us back from experiencing what God has for us. And in a sense, it's letting go of power and control. It's letting go of certainty, the desire to want to be certain, and saying, we're going to trust you, God, and we're going to get through this. And in fact, here are some signs that you are past or are passing through or have passed through the wall. I hope this makes sense. When you start to consider the fact that perhaps you're a little more broken. And what does it mean to be broken? It's a very Christianese term, but it means that you don't need to be in perfect control of your life. You're very humble, right? Humility and reliance on God. That's what it means to be broken. That is to say that you're no longer, I think, trying to power your way through circumstances, but instead you say, I surrender to God, right? When you start to notice that you're doing that more and more, that's a sign that you are passing through the wall, or you have passed through the wall, whatever that circumstance that you could call the wall in your life. Secondly, a greater appreciation of what he calls holy unknowing, right? Being able to stop needing to know the reasons behind everything, right? I'm a very curious person, and I want to know the reasons behind everything. And there's nothing wrong with curiosity and wanting to learn and grow, or even asking the questions of why is this happening to me? There's nothing wrong with that. But there's a difference between that curiosity and being obsessed with needing to know the answers to everything, especially the changes or the circumstances in your life. Once you stop needing to know the answers, that's an example of you getting past this wall or being past the wall. Next is a deeper ability to wait for God. Again, this is very related to the last one. It's being able to stop and say, I need to know now. So you're no longer saying, I need to know now, or I want this or that now. No, you're able to wait for God to show himself to you and to give you perhaps some resolution to what you're going through. And lastly, a greater detachment. What does it mean to be detached? It's often what comes to my mind when I think of detachment is giving up caring, but that's not quite the right way to put it. I think it's more so this of saying, I'm not as absorbed in whatever it is that we're referring to. Let's say that you're in a situation and again, you really, really want something, right? I can use my own example. I really, really wanted Sarah to come home, from Korea during that year, right? Okay, but I had to learn detachment. And again, it doesn't mean not caring, but it just means giving up the need to have whatever it is that you want so much, right? You're not as obsessed with it, and you instead rely on God, right? So I hope this makes sense that all of these different aspects, all of these different signs that you're past this wall is really about relying on God, right? Giving up the need to control things, giving up the need to have power, and you rely on God. If you notice that about yourself, then that means that you are capable of getting past these circumstances and these challenging times in our lives. And if you don't see those things in yourself, then all that means is that there's some more humbling to do, there's some more partnering with God to do. And it's so, you know what? I'm just noticing the chat. Some of you are going through this sort of thing right now in your lives, right? Health issues, job issues, different things. It's so difficult. At the same time, this is actually an opportunity to grow in God more than ever before. And the way you do that is you connect with him inwardly in a humble way and saying, I don't know what to do, but God is with me and he will get me through this. And in fact, he will get you through it in such a way where you actually grow more into like the person that he wants you to be than ever before. Every time, circumstance, every time I didn't know what was happening, I've become stronger and grew in him more as a result after the fact. Now, while you're in the thick of it, it's tough. I understand. And that's why we pray for each other. That's why we support one another. But it's worth it because God brings so much good out of challenging situations. So I hope that's been a blessing to you. And we're going to continue this week every morning at approximately 10 o'clock. I say approximately because sometimes I'm not able to get to this computer, exactly at 10. Approximately 10 o'clock, approximately 6 o'clock. Those are the times that we go through what's called the daily office. It's sort of like a devotional and a time to spend with God, and we do it right here on our closed Facebook group. So if you haven't joined our private Facebook group, please go ahead and join. It's called Glad Tidings Church of God Staying Connected Group, and that's how we've been doing these live streams every day, going through the daily office. I hope it's been helpful to you. You can either join me live or watch it after the fact. But